Chapter 29. The World That Works Without Hesitation. The natural world does not pause to decide whether it feels ready. A hawk does not circle and then consult its mood before it drops. A wolf does not negotiate with its nerves before it moves. A river does not ask whether it has enough confidence to continue carving stone. Living systems do not interpret their own sensations as arguments. They respond to conditions. They move, they adjust, they conserve, they expend. Their timing is not perfect, but it is direct. Human beings are animals with an unusual complication. We experience sensation and then build a second world on top of it. We do not only feel fear, we explain it. We do not only feel fatigue, we predict what it means about the day. We do not only feel uncertainty, we construct a story about identity, risk, and future consequence. In that second world, action becomes conditional. The mind begins treating internal weather as a gatekeeper. It asks permission from moods that were never meant to govern. Nature offers a counterexample that is both obvious and easy to miss. Functioning does not require emotional negotiation. This does not mean the natural world is calm. It is full of intensity. It is full of threat and competition, scarcity and risk. It is full of death. Yet it is not full of drama in the human sense. There is no narrative about what should have happened. There is no prolonged rumination about what might happen next week. There is no shame spiral after a missed attempt. There is only response and then the next response. The system does not waste energy trying to make itself feel different before it acts. That economy is not virtue, it is survival. Energy is conserved because energy must be conserved. Attention is directed because attention must be directed. Movement happens because movement is required. When conditions change, the system changes. When conditions stabilize, the system stabilizes. There is no additional layer of interpretation trying to justify the moment to itself. The world works with what is here. Human life often becomes difficult precisely because we do not. We carry yesterday into today and then wonder why today feels heavy. We carry imagined futures into the next hour and then wonder why the hour feels urgent. We carry status concerns into simple tasks and then wonder why starting feels threatening. In nature, hesitation exists, but it is not moralized. It is not prolonged into identity. It appears as a brief assessment of risk, then movement or stillness. The system is not embarrassed by its caution, and it is not proud of its aggression. It is simply responsive. Responsiveness is not impulsivity. It is contact. Many people confuse directness with recklessness because their own directness is often accompanied by emotional surge. They know what it feels like to act while tense, to speak while angry, to decide while anxious. They call that directness and conclude that directness is dangerous. What they are describing is not directness, it is reaction. The natural world is direct without being reactive in the human sense. Its movements are not arguments with itself, they are answers to conditions. Answers do not require self-justification. A living system is not trying to prove it is capable, it is trying to function. That difference is enormous. The need to prove is one of the most exhausting human additions. It turns every task into a referendum. It turns difficulty into exposure. It turns feedback into threat. In nature, failure is information. An animal misses a hunt and it does not spend the evening building a philosophy about its incompetence. It adjusts its strategy or it tries again. It conserves energy and returns when it can. The system remains oriented toward function. Human beings can do this as well, but it requires unlearning. It requires recognizing how much of our hesitation is not assessment, but negotiation. Negotiation with feeling, negotiation with imagined perception, negotiation with the desire to be certain before risking motion. In the natural world, risk is not optional. Risk is built into living. Waiting for perfect certainty is not available. A prey animal does not require a guarantee before it leaves cover. A predator does not require reassurance before it pursues. The cost of waiting is often greater than the cost of acting imperfectly, so the system moves. This creates a different relationship with readiness. Readiness in nature is not a mood, it is a state of alignment between capacity and condition. The animal rests when it must, moves when it can, hunts when opportunity appears, withdraws when risk is too high. Readiness is embedded in timing, not in self-perception. Human readiness, by contrast, is often a psychological ceremony. The person waits for a feeling of alignment that may never arrive because it is being treated as a prerequisite rather than as a byproduct of engagement. In the natural world, the system does not treat internal state as a ceremony, it treats it as information. A system can be tired and still move if movement is required. It can be hungry and still wait if waiting is safer. It can be fearful and still act if action is the only path. Emotion is not denied, it is integrated. The animal does not ask whether it should feel fear, it feels it. The feeling is part of its perception of conditions. What it does next depends on the environment, the body, and the immediate reality, not on a story about what fear means about its identity. Identity is where human hesitation often becomes pathological. When a human hesitates, they interpret hesitation as evidence of who they are. They label themselves as avoidant, lazy, weak, unorganized, unmotivated. These labels then become part of the mechanism that produces further hesitation. The person is no longer dealing with a task, they are dealing with a self-concept. The natural world does not do this. The system has no interest in preserving a narrative about itself. It has no reputation to defend internally. Its only concern is function. Function is the closest thing to a moral system nature has, not in an ethical sense, but in an evolutionary one. Actions that work persist, actions that do not work fade. This creates a ruthless clarity that is absent in human self-talk. Human beings can persist in behaviors that do not work because they are attached to the story those behaviors support. They can avoid action for years and still claim they are merely waiting for the right time. They can distract themselves constantly and still claim they are overwhelmed by life. They can postpone the hard conversation and still claim they are being considerate. Stories can preserve dysfunction. Nature does not preserve dysfunction out of politeness toward the self. This is why the natural world can feel brutal and clean at the same time. It is not clean because it is kind, it is clean because it cannot afford waste. Waste is punished immediately. A deer that loses attention gets taken. A bird that misjudges timing loses the meal. A plant that cannot compete for light is shaded out. This is not cruelty, it is consequence. Consequence is immediate, and therefore behavior is shaped quickly. Human consequence is often delayed, and delay creates room for self-deception. A person can indulge internal noise for years without immediate catastrophic cost. They can lose hours to distraction while still meeting enough obligations to survive. They can avoid growth and still remain comfortable. The pain arrives later, often as regret, stagnation, a vague sense that life is slipping. Because consequence is delayed, the mind can continue negotiating with itself. It can continue pretending that tomorrow will be different without building anything that would make tomorrow different. Nature has no interest in tomorrow as fantasy. It has only tomorrow as condition. This does not mean the natural world is always in motion. Stillness is one of its primary strategies. Many systems survive by doing less than more. But the stillness is not avoidance, it is conservation. It is timing. It is a choice made by the body and the environment, not by a narrative about deserving rest or needing motivation. The stillness ends when conditions change. The system does not cling to rest as identity, and it does not cling to effort as virtue. It moves when it must. This is an important corrective to the human tendency to turn work into moral theater. Many people do not merely work, they judge themselves for how they work. They feel guilty if they rest, they feel inadequate if they struggle, they feel anxious if they are not constantly progressing. They turn effort into a measure of worth. Nature has no such measure, it has only timing. Work occurs in seasons, effort rises and falls, intensity comes in bursts and then recedes. Recovery is not indulgence, it is part of the cycle. The natural world is rhythmic because rhythm is efficient. It prevents exhaustion. It prevents waste. It prevents overextension. Humans often ignore rhythm and then wonder why they break. They work in ways that are emotionally driven, bursts of intensity followed by collapse, ambition followed by avoidance, urgency followed by numbness. These patterns feel human because they are human, but they are not inevitable. They are often the result of living without clear timing, without a reliable structure that contains effort and allows recovery. Nature's lesson is not to become an animal, it is to become less theatrical, to be less compelled to explain, justify, and narrate every moment, to be more willing to respond directly to what is here, to treat emotion as weather rather than as law, to treat readiness as a function of timing and capacity rather than as a mood to be awaited. The world that works without hesitation is not free of fear or fatigue. It is free of prolonged negotiation with fear and fatigue. This is the key difference. A living system does not ask, "What does this feeling mean about me?" It asks, "What does this condition require?" The human mind can learn to ask the same question, not by denying its complexity, but by placing that complexity in its proper role. Interpretation has a place, planning has a place, reflection has a place. The problem begins when these processes become substitutes for contact, when they become ways to avoid action while pretending to prepare for it. In nature, preparation is embedded in behavior. The bird builds the nest by building it. The beaver builds the dam by building it. The hive is built through repeated placement of small pieces. There is no moment of existential readiness. There is no internal debate about whether the creature is worthy of the task. The work is not symbolic. It is required, and so it is done. Human work becomes lighter when it becomes less symbolic, when it is treated as craft rather than as identity, when difficulty is treated as resistance rather than as exposure, when emotion is treated as weather rather than as instruction. This is why the natural world can be such a clarifying mirror. It reminds us that functioning is not a mood, it is a relationship with conditions. Hesitation will always exist in human life. We are capable of foresight, which means we can imagine risk before it arrives. We are capable of shame, which means we can fear how we will be seen. We are capable of narrative, which means we can turn minor discomfort into a story that blocks action for weeks. These capacities are part of what makes us human. They are not errors, but they can be governed. The natural world does not teach governance through words, it teaches it through example. A world that functions without emotional negotiation reveals what is possible when the next move is chosen for reality rather than for relief. It shows a form of focus that is not intense, not self-conscious, not performative. Focus as belonging fully to what is happening and moving when movement is required. From that view, human hesitation begins to look less like fate and more like habit. And habit is something that can be reshaped, not through inspiration, but through repeated return to the simple question nature keeps answering without announcement. What does this moment require, and what is the next contact that meets it?